second year studying public policy. I'm also a member of the American Marketing Association chapter at USC. So if you're interested in marketing, you can also look into that. But enough about me. Let's get into a little bit about how the panel is going to go tonight. We'll have introductions from our panelists. We'll have a moderated discussion. Unfortunately, Heather and Molly can't make it, but our other three panelists are here. So I guess we can start with Chelsea to introduce herself.
Hi, I am the early careers recruiter at OMG 23. So our client is actually Disney. That is why we're part of Omnicom, which if you're getting into media or marketing, you might have heard of Omnicom. We're one of the big four. They'll say big four, big five, big six in marketing. If you Google it, it's going to come up with all sorts of things. But Omnicom is one of the bigger agency groups, holding companies, I should say. So that's where the OMG comes from. And then the 23 comes from Disney being founded in 1923. So a little piece of trivia for you as well. I became a recruiter about 2 years ago. My background's actually in programmatic buying. So I have a little bit of a unique track in terms of how I got to be in talent acquisition, but I'm excited to be here tonight. Love USC grads. So yeah, excited to talk more.
If you want to go.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Nick Brown. Extremely happy to be here. I am currently a talent acquisition specialist, aka just a fancy word for recruiter, here at Gallo Wines. Gallo Wines, our roots kind of established before and after the Prohibition, and yeah, we've been the number one wine supplier in the world and number three spirits in the world. So pretty much the whole kind of like alcohol industry kind of runs through Gallo. Kind of started in recruiting recently, kind of worked my way up in the sales department, the sales rep, a district manager, and yeah, happy to be here. Went to the U of A alumni, so yeah, bear down, found Gallo at a career fair and then been with them ever since.
Thank you. And then Michael.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Michael, or some people call me Mike. I'm currently working with the NHL. I actually took that job recently, about a month ago. That's kind of why it's not listed because I took it last minute. And I'm a live social contributor with them, meaning that I film and edit content that they post on their social media pages. I'm currently based in New York right now, so I'm covering the three teams, the Islanders, the Devils, and the New York Rangers. I have a lot of experience working in sports and music. So I've worked with the National Football League, Major League Baseball, and ESPN College Game Day. And last season, I worked with the New York Giants as a social producer, making some cool edits and stuff like that. That was going off the field, and some stuff that was on the field. And currently, right now, I'm in the digital media management program here at USC. So I'm a grad student. I'm set to be done with the classes by next summer. And I graduated from the University at Buffalo with a Bachelor of Arts in Media Studies and a certificate in journalism last year. So I'm class of 2023 for that as well. And yeah, my experience stems in music and sports. And right now with music, I'm a social media manager with Atlantic Records and Empire. I'm bringing that together, sort of starting my own business called the Barry Milan Media, meaning basically that I'm managing social media artists. I mean, sorry, excuse me, music artists accounts on social media. Some people that I run include A Boogie with the Hoodie, OGZ, 310 Baby, and Shoreline Mafia, and a couple other artists. Some artists you guys may know about since you all are more on the West Coast, since most of you all are here are from there. And I'm growing that clientele really and sort of starting a business around that.
Now on to the Q&A portion of our panel, and I'll start with a question for Chelsea. As someone with
managing client communications with internal teams, and there are planning roles within agencies as well that you almost work as a client representative to your agency. So even if you're like wanting to move client side or you're not sure, I don't think that is necessarily, I think if you start at an agency, plenty of people go client side, and vice versa. So some people might start client side, and then there can be incentives to both sides. I think that one thing you will probably see if you are looking at like Glassdoor or looking at some reviews, you're probably going to see similar things across agencies in terms of can be long hours. You'll hear digital never sleeps, which is like, I know, a really annoying thing. But basically, all this to say is that you do hear about long hours within agencies because you are focused on a client and their needs. I think the thing to think about is that you're always answering to someone. So even if you're on the client side, you might be answering to your bosses. So again, it's not necessarily there's one that's better than the other. You might just find that you like one more than the other. And then obviously, if you're agent side, you might work on different types of clients. So if you're on I've worked at agencies where I'm working on all different types of clients. So you can kind of find out, oh, I like working with healthcare clients, or I like working with consumer packaged goods, or different things like that. Whereas agency side is obviously good, or I'm sorry, client side is obviously going to be, you're focused on that one type of client. But again, I wouldn't say, I think both have pros and cons. I don't think that either is a bad route to go. And I think in terms of your day to day, when you are starting out in your career, a lot of it is going to be you're learning about your client, but you're also learning about your job and your day to day. So any skill you learn is going to be helpful. So like, let's say, you learn a lot of like different tricks in Excel, or you spend a lot of your day in Excel, you will probably just be like the resource for your team in Excel if you go to a different team and maybe they don't use it as much. Or my very first job, I was working in print, and I was so anxious because I thought print is not, as exciting as digital. Everything's moving to digital, all these things, which is, by the way, not necessarily true, but that's what I felt. And that is where I learned how to do a VLOOKUP. That's where I got really good at pivot tables. That's where I met the people that later recruited me to do a job in digital. So that's just kind of an aside that I hope kind of gives some like peace and takes pressure off in terms of which route do I go, or which is the best direction to move my career. You're going to learn from each job, and everything is going to be helpful. In terms of what I look for as a recruiter, I'm going to kind of share like a broad spectrum because I do work with early careers. So what I look for is a little bit different than what people are going to look for down the road. So having been on the like working at an agency as a programmatic specialist, I'll also tell you some things that I wish I had known that I now know and I do share with candidates. So a lot of what people are looking for with early careers or with people that are just starting their career is like, why do you want to do this? Why are you interested in doing planning? Why are you interested in working in social media? So obviously, sometimes you're going to know to an extent. You may not be like, maybe you know someone that does it, and so you have like a really good idea of what the day-to-day looks like. If you're like me, it's like, well, I don't know. I know that I graduated college and I know I need a job, and I think I can do this looking at the job description. That's basically how I started out my career. So that's fine. But maybe look at the job description and say, this part of what you're describing sounds interesting to me. Like maybe it says something like, you'll do research to influence a buy. I have found that I like doing research. I like having a foundation for why I'm making decisions. So that part really appealed to me in the job description. Pull from that job description in terms of why are you interested in this particular role or this particular company? When you're talking to recruiters, like for myself, I like to help steer people if they are interested in more than one role. I think that's fantastic, and we can discuss through that. But I would kind of plan on when you're talking to recruiters, you never know how they're going to react or how they'll kind of approach roles. So I would have a role in mind and why. the other thing is, and this is something that will be true starting out, but as you continue in your career, you are probably finding, if you are searching for jobs right now, or you're even just like, you know, talking to people, hearing panels, everyone's titles are all over the place in marketing. So when recruiters are searching, just like when you're searching, we're looking for keywords. So if you find a job description, they're like, this is it, this is what I want to do. Try to update your LinkedIn page to reflect some of those keywords maybe you saw in the job description, which maybe y'all all already knew this, and maybe I was the only person that didn't know this in the world, but I never knew that. And especially working in programmatic, that's very specialized. So I thought it spoke for itself. But what I didn't realize is that I could list out which platforms am I working in programmatic, what skills do I have in Excel, really pull from some of those things. And obviously, as you move up in your career, you're going to have more platforms and different things that you can add there. But don't be afraid to put things there now, like attention to detail you'll hear for the rest of your life. Name me a job that doesn't need attention to detail, but that is something you'll hear a lot. People want attention to detail, strong communication skills. If you, for example, I find candidates, if they've done any coding, which not saying that this is the only situation, I'm just pulling from an example, but if someone has done code, maybe they don't necessarily want to go into coding, but you have to be very good attention to detail in order to do coding. It's not very forgiving in terms of if you enter something wrong, it's just wrong. So things like that, find things in your resume that really showcase the skills that you know you have. And then also be okay knowing that you don't have to know everything. This is an entry-level role. You know, you're not expected to know how to do everything yet, but what you are expected is to like really show and emphasize why you want this role. Why should we pick you over another candidate? And I know it's cheesy, but being yourself is also just like really important. When we are looking at building teams, and I think they've shown studies as well to show that diversity is like extremely like it is imperative for a company to not only survive but to do well. So showcasing like who you are, some of the things that you might bring to the table that other people maybe don't have, or maybe something that you're just like, I know that this is an area that I do really well in. Showcase those things as best you can. And then always have questions for recruiters. I know y'all have probably heard this a lot, but I always tell people if you don't have a question ready, I would ask, what is the management style for this manager that I'd be working under? Because that is a question I never knew to ask. And you might find that that manager, maybe they're a little bit of a micromanager. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't. Or maybe they are very like big picture. And so you're just going to be like more dependent on the people that are working under them to answer your questions or things like that. It's just kind of helpful to get an idea of those things. Asking about like days in office, or you know, what are some of the benefits to working at this company? Those are good questions and fair questions to ask. They're not necessarily going to be super like influential in terms of really like showing the recruiter you're interested in the company. So, you know, it's a two-way street. Get the information you need to know, like, is this something I even want to do with my time? But also, you know, try to think what would help show them like, I'm really interested in doing this. As you move up in your career and you get more things on your resume that are a little bit more maybe one-to-one with the jobs you're looking for, I would say, again, when you are finding jobs that you're like, I want this job, try to really emphasize some of those keywords, some of those key tasks in your LinkedIn page as well as your resume. And then this is something that I'm pretty sure recruiters hate when I tell people this, but I'm going to anyway. I know it can be really hard to hear back from recruiters, myself included. Sometimes we get a lot of applicants for things, and I would love to be able to talk to each individual person, but sometimes it's just not feasible. Or sometimes hiring managers make decisions really quickly. So I don't want to like have somebody thinking they're being put up for this role when maybe it's already kind of a done deal, things like that. So what I would say is don't just apply, but try to figure out that recruiter's email. And one trick I've learned that I've literally shared with friends now, because I'm like, this is all that's going to happen is maybe you'll get a bounce back, or maybe it will be weird if you send it to a random stranger. But typically, if you find out one person in the company's email address, you can figure out others. So like for OMG23, it's going to be our first name dot our last name at omg23.com. And that will be true for pretty much everybody at the company. Obviously, there might be times where people have very common names. If we have John Smith, we might have 3 John Smiths. I don't know. That's just the first thing that came to mind. But that's something else I'd recommend, is trying to get in front of the recruiter. Because I think especially with early careers, that can be half the battle. You might be qualified. You might be great. It's just getting, your resume just might be getting buried in a pile of resumes. And it's not fair to you. It's not a perfect system, but that's just one thing I also suggest to candidates, is just to try to, get in people's inbox. It might be a little bit, might give you a little bit better of a chance of getting in front of that recruiter. But anyway, that is all I have to say on that. Obviously would love to answer any questions about it later on. But yeah, that's kind of from an early career standpoint, but also just later on in your career. I find a lot of it is just a updating your LinkedIn game, which can kind of sound silly, but it can make a world of difference in terms of somebody just being able to find you.
Okay. Thank you, Chelsea, for that insight. Now I'll ask a question for Nick. As a recruiter, what kind of work experience, on-campus involvement, or networking connections can help an applicant stand out in a very competitive hiring process?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. I'm going to speak on it on behalf of, on like the Gallo side, but also just generalistic speaking. Yeah, in terms of Gallo, what kind of work experience do we like? Since this is a sales company, we really look for any type of, in-person customer facing type role. If you do have sales, that is great. But yeah, anything that dealing with kind of like what I said, any type of customer or any type of face to face really stands out for our specific role, just because our SODP program, obviously it is a sales job and we're interacting with, retailers all the time. So we want to make sure that you have that ability to be persuasive, that ability to just really hold your own and talk to retailers. That really goes a long way. And then when it comes to on-campus involvement, I like to encourage all students to really get involved as much as you can. Coming from experience, I was someone who was really involved on campus, but didn't have that much work experience. But I really leveraged all the clubs that I was in, all the e-boards that I was a part of. I really leveraged that in my interview process. And I think that really helped me kind of stand out from the others. Being involved can mean, join clubs. I think clubs are a really good thing to join. First of all, you get to meet new people and you get to meet new friends, and also you get insight and just different valuable stuff with it. Access to different employers coming in, different tips and tricks to help you guys out, be, more prepared for life after college. So please get involved. Also Greek life too, that really counts as well. That helps us kind of like see that you are part of the organization, can be a team player. Those are all good things that help stand out in our process. And when it comes to, networking, when you are going through the hiring process, one thing that I would encourage you all, I personally really, really do enjoy when students, follow up with me after, or, ask me for a coffee chat. That really shows that you're going the extra mile to, number one, find out about, more about the company, but also that you're showing the initiative to really go out of your way and reach out. So I think that really, kind of sets apart if someone who is really involved in campus, has some kind of work experience, and wants to meet up, wants to hear about the future opportunities with our company, and going the extra mile. We're going to give them a pretty strong consideration in the whole interview process. It's all about taking the extra effort. It's all about going the extra mile. It's 2024. You have to really, if you want something, you have to go get it, because it's not gonna come to you easily. So that's what I would encourage everyone to do. And yeah, it's like I said, with our company, with Gallo, student involvement is huge. huge, huge, huge. In our SLDP, our Self Leadership Development Program, we are trying to find future leaders here at Gallo. So we want to be able to see that, you have some type of leadership experience, or at least some type of, being a part of something for the greater good under your belt. So I would encourage you to just be active and, anything that you can to really put yourself in a better position. I would strongly encourage you all to.
Great, thank you. And our next question is for Michael. Given your prior experience in the industry, what factors and reasoning influenced your decision to return to pursue a master's degree? And how's your time at graduate school changed your perspectives and goals?
Yep. So to answer that question, Alex, like I mentioned in my intro, I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Media Studies from the University at Buffalo, and I had a lot of experience. Like you look at my resume last year, and you would think that like this person's not going to grad school, like they're just going to work in sports. Because just to give a little bit background on when I graduated, the stuff on my resume while I was in school, I was working with the NFL as a LCC, which is a live content correspondent. So I was doing video content, like just on the field, mainly filming some of the games and sending it to the social team so they could post it. And I did stuff with Major League Baseball, so like editing like the videos for the player social, like Aaron Judge, like the Yankees are in the World Series for any baseball fans out there. Those videos that he posts, if anyone's an Aaron Judge fan, he posts like those real highlight recaps of whenever they play another team or have a series. I was one of the people like on the player social team with MLB that edited those videos when I was working with them. So like I said, I had a lot of experience in sports. But like Nicholas said, if you want something, you have to go after it. So I wanted to maximize my education, and I just really wasn't satisfied with where I was at. And like Chelsea mentioned before, a lot of people early in their careers, they don't really know what they want to do. So I had all this experience in sports, but I still didn't know what I really wanted to do fully. I did have a lot of experience working in social, but that's not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I felt like I could do something more because I had tons of experience video editing, videography, which is shooting video, photography, and now managing content with Atlanta Records and Empire. So I wanted to expand everything in my portfolio, and USC I saw was a great program, and they had the digital media management program that I felt would maximize my skill set and everything like that. So answering the next question with how it's changed my perspectives on everything, just some of the classes, like for example, some of the classes I'm taking now in digital media management have to do with leadership, leading digital media teams, or just leadership in general. And that's something that I want to do right now, which is the whole Iberi Milan Media thing, which is the company that I'm kind of starting, which is based around social media management for artists, because that was another thing I was doing while I was at Buffalo. I was running TikToks for people like A Boogie, for more you West Coast people, Shoreline Mafia, OGZ, like 310 Baby. Those are more of like probably the artists that are bigger out there. I was doing their TikTok as well. And I wanted to expand that. And I saw potential with that, but I would not have been able to find the right tools and have and learn about everything that comes with starting a company if it wasn't for some of these classes here at USC. So some of the stuff I'm even learning now to this day, still in these classes, I'm applying to the whole company that I'm starting. So like Nicholas and Chelsea said, they said great things. Like some people don't know what they want to do, and you have to go after certain things in life. Going after my master's helped me bring together all my visions because I had a lot of different visions, but bringing them all together was the biggest thing that USC has helped me with. And that's my advice for people in the future in this Zoom call. Just try things. You never know how it's gonna go, and there's nothing wrong with going back to school. For me, I had a lot of stuff on my resume. There's even people that still ask me like why I'm even in grad school because I had so much experience with things. But you could still accomplish a lot of different things, and it's great to just have options. That's the biggest thing in life. Having a lot of options is an amazing thing, and that's something that I'm trying to do and trying to accomplish with pursuing my master's degree.
I think we're going to do one more question and then we'll do student Q&A. So this is open to any of the panelists if they want to answer. As someone with experience in the industry, what changing trends have you noticed over the past years? And do you have any recommendations for students to focus on their studies to make themselves more marketable to reflect these changes?
Yeah, I can answer that. I'm a huge sports fan, so I watch all sports, baseball, hockey, basketball, everything. And a big thing that I'm noticing is there's less professionalism on social media. So a lot of these sports teams are, or like sports accounts that are run by social media managers, they seem to be people around like our demographic, which is like between the age of like 20 to 30 or just mainly low 20s. Because I'm noticing that instead of going with the classic like simple posts like, oh, we won a game or this and that. A lot of teams are going towards like the funny approach. An example is like the White Sox. I think they might have had like one of the worst seasons in MLB history. And rather than just tweeting the score, they kind of like made a joke of their own team, which is like kind of interesting. You wouldn't think like a team would do that, but it translated to a lot of social media growth and impressions and everything. Like a lot of their tweets, the worst team in MLB got like the most likes on a couple tweets for a few days. So I'm seeing a lot of companies go towards the less professional approach, but just because they're going towards that approach doesn't mean that, you as candidates or just people as candidates should be not professional as well. I would just say that that means that they're looking more towards the younger people. And I think that internships and experience are bigger than ever before. So I feel like a lot of younger people are getting more opportunities with things. And a lot of social media, a lot of people are seeing the value of social media. A lot of these athletes are starting their own Twitch channels, things like that. Music artists, even the people I work with are investing more into their content. So digital media is a growing field. And just because, like I said, stuff is veering towards more of an unprofessional approach doesn't mean that, we as candidates or people looking for jobs and stuff like that shouldn't be professional, because a lot of stuff on your resume definitely plays into a role when they are trying to pick you for a job or pick anyone for a job. So I would just say there's a lot of more opportunities I feel like in the digital media aspect for people at a younger age than expected. Like me as an example, I didn't think that I would be shooting NFL games when I was like 18, 17 years old. But there's a lot of other people that are around that age now still shooting some games to this day, like someone that I know just got hired doing some stuff with a couple teams. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, no matter what age you are, and just because you're young doesn't mean you can't accomplish certain things in life.
I'm going to piggyback off of you, Mike, because one, I completely agree. I think that we've all seen like commercials where it's kind of cringy, where it's like clearly somebody older has like seen their like kids TikTok and they're trying to make a commercial out of it, and it's just like, no, like it didn't land, you know. And I think that that's something that this generation is going to be much more savvy than you probably even realize you are. And that's something that older generations, like that's just, it's going to be so out of their realm of understanding in terms of keeping up with like what might be trending right now or what might be coming up in the future, in terms of like what's going to be popular. There's different things like that. And then I'll also say, I think if you're wanting to get into creating content, I think that that's an area that is growing a lot, and companies are really seeing the benefit of. It's basically mouth to mouth marketing, but it's you're reaching a lot more people, and that's some of the most compelling ways to market to people. So I would say definitely, like, if you're interested in that, you should pursue it. I talked to some candidates who are more interested in doing something like that. That's not something that you're necessarily going to see at every agency. You will see it some. But I would say, kind of also piggybacking off what we were saying earlier, um, I think when you're starting your career, it can be one, really tempting to just take a job because it's offered to you, which no shame in that. Like, I mean, it's easier to find a job once you have a job, in terms of like you're already making money and you can continue looking. So like there's no shame in that. But I also think, coming from someone who changed careers later on in their career, I think pursue what you want to do. And it might take a little while, it may take some time. But there are a lot of companies that are continuing to do that. And I think it's going to continue to grow. And then two things kind of like not in the same wavelength at all. But one thing I've seen as a recruiter is people using Canva for their resumes, and I would warn against that a little bit because we use these systems where you upload your resume and then it's like the information gets kind of like auto-populated. And sometimes there can be issues with Canva. So just as kind of like a technical thing that I would hate for a candidate to not get considered just because of something like a technical issue that you didn't even know could happen. So sometimes I ask candidates to like resend me theirs as a PDF, which I know it's not going to be as pretty and you put a lot of work into your resume, but that is one thing I'd recommend. The other thing is don't have your picture on your resume. I know that can sound kind of crazy, but as recruiters, we're really trying to avoid bias when looking through resumes. So some recruiters won't even consider you if you have your picture on there. I'm not necessarily going to do that, but a lot of times I'll kind of try to just ignore the picture or even ask the candidate to remove their picture. Like I'll tell you on the call if I see something like that. But those are just things that I'm seeing in the industry that are coming up, I think, more and more. And I would just kind of encourage you to, obviously different people have different opinions. So don't everyone go delete your resume and start from scratch if you're like, that's exactly what my resume looks like. It's Canva with my picture all over it. But just know if you're having trouble hearing back from jobs, maybe consider just making an update like that.
Okay. If that's all for our moderated questions, we'll be moving on to student Q&A. We'll give priority to students with cameras on and virtual hand raised, and then you can unmute and then ask a question. So Joey, if you have a question, you can go ahead.
Yes, so since we were speaking about resumes, I had a question about that. If we're applying to marketing roles, would it be better to be sort of creative with your resume, since it is for like a marketing role, and show like your creative side in the resume by making it colorful or showing that you have creativity, or would it be better to just have your resume just black and white, professional, straight to the point with like bullet points, like a typical just resume?
That's a really good question. And I'm probably going to answer it in kind of an irritating way. So I apologize, Joey. But I will tell you, it kind of depends. So for me in media, media think very much like you are doing the planning, the budgeting, the buying side. So it's not very creative. So for me, I might have like a minute at max to look at a resume, which I know everyone is like, I spent so long on this resume. Believe me, I'm the same way. I'm like, ugh. But so I would say you want it to be clear and concise and to the point. You don't want it to be more than one page. You want it to just be one page, which I know can also be really difficult. But I would say go that route for sure. If you are looking into getting into something like creating content or something that maybe is a little bit more creative, you might want to take a little bit more liberty with your resume. But I would still make sure you are valuing communication over everything else. Because if it's not, if a recruiter can't look at it and quickly know like why you're interested, what skills you have, that type of thing, then they're just going to move on.
Okay. Or does OMG 23 have a role like that, like similar to content or something creative?
No. So, couple of things. And I think that this is where it gets kind of frustrating when you're looking at media agencies. And again, I'm saying this as someone that also worked on like the media side. So at OMG 23, no, you might see if like in-house Disney has roles like that. I would search for things like content creator, or you might like look for some different roles if you can find one in another company and then search some titles that are similar to that. We do have some sister agencies that will have similar types of roles. For example, I worked at a sister agency called Hearts and Science. It's also under Omnicom. And there is a team that works with content. They would work with, like, have y'all ever been reading like a recipe and they're like, make sure you use this type of mayonnaise, it's going to make all the difference. And then when you get to the bottom of the recipe, you realize, oh, it's sponsored by the people who make this mayonnaise. That type of content is also something that companies do a lot. And so there is a team that works with stuff like that. But in terms of like social media content, I would say in the LA area, I think, don't everybody quote me on this. And I know this is recorded, so that's like why I'm even saying that. But I think RPA has a team that maybe does some stuff like that. And then definitely, like I said at the beginning, when you're looking at like the big four in marketing, Omnicom is going to be up there. There are probably other agencies that might have some more creative content type things. But some companies are going to keep that in-house. So for Disney, I would say you might look at Disney and see what they have like within the Disney brand and company. And then I would also say if you are, let's say you really like sports or something and you're wanting to work with a client of that nature, clients are going to typically choose agencies to work with that are close to where they are headquartered. So let's say, like, I live in Dallas, so I'll use a example that everyone will love. If you really want to work for the Dallas Cowboys, they're having an incredible season. I hope y'all are watching. Then you would probably want to like live somewhere close to Dallas, or really like in Irving or Grand Prairie, like where they are, because that's where a lot of times it's going to be easier for clients to work with people, just as like a FYI there. But I know, hopefully that answered all the question. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in.
Yeah, it did answer the question. Sorry, I had one more question. For the assistant media planner role, are you going to be the recruiter for that position?
I am the recruiter for that. And I can talk a little bit about that really quickly. So if a role is posted on our website, that means it is open. I'm not going to post a role if we're considering someone internal, or there's already somebody like a finalist for that or something. So I will do my best to like keep that updated. So if it's posted, it's open. Assistant media planning, I would say, is one of the kind of roles that if you're looking to potentially move client side one day, or let's say you know or you don't know, doesn't matter. That is one of those roles I would say has that kind of ability. You learn a little bit about a lot of things. But again, if you're looking for a creative role, and I'm not just saying this to you, Joe, I'm just saying this to everyone, media agencies is going to depend. Some are going to have in-house creative teams and some aren't. And I know that makes it difficult when you're searching. And I wish I could, provide some sort of clear, easy way to know that when you're looking at a company, but it's sometimes just kind of like you figure it out as you go. You start searching and, you kind of do one of those like rabbit hole things where all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I realize now this company does have some creative offerings. This one doesn't. One company within Omnicom I know is a more creative focused agency is BBDO. I know it's another acronym. Marketing loves acronyms. I don't know what it stands for. So otherwise I'd say BBDO as in blah, blah, blah. But they work on a lot of very high profile clients. I don't think that they work on Disney at all, but they might work on some other entertainment clients. So again, in terms of me just being knowledgeable about Omnicom, because that's the company I'm like under. But that's one you could look at if that's an interest. But for assistant media planning, it is not going to be as creative. It will be very client facing. And people that are interested in that, I find like that aspect. They like being kind of in a more client facing role versus behind the scenes. I won't get into it too much because I know we have time limits, but I am actively recruiting for that role. So if it's something you're interested in, you can obviously apply. But like I said earlier, I would definitely email. And that will be a little bit easier for me to, like I said, we get a lot of resumes. So I want to be open up and transparent about that it's like a lot of times it's like, no, I bet your application's great. I bet your resume is great. But I will see it at some point, but it may just be like it could be 2 weeks from now, it could be, whenever. So I would definitely recommend emailing if that's something that you or anybody on this call is interested in.
All right, thank you.
A reminder for people with very specific questions, we will have breakout rooms after the student Q&A portion. We'll go Rosario and then Alina.
Hi, yeah, thank you for the presentation. I actually have a question for Michael. So you had a lot of previous experience before grad school, and even in grad school, you have like a lot of professional experience. Have you ever encountered when like applying for internships, because it's like internships is very like, because you're still like students, or when you're applying for internships, do you ever had an encounter where you're like overqualified, but people may think you're overqualified for the role?
Yeah, that actually has happened to me last year. When before I got the Giants role, I was applying for a lot of different like positions and stuff like that. Some of the stuff on Handshake too. I think USC is partnered with Handshake now, but I was using Handshake for a while. And I applied for a couple positions like social media manager positions with some smaller companies. And yeah, they actually like wanted to give me a different role because they saw like my previous experience. So that has happened. But still I just like apply for a lot of different things. When I was on the job search, I didn't like limit my search or anything like that, but that has happened to me before. If that answered your question, sorry.
Yes, and how do you like kind of go about that? Like I know you started applying for other types of role, but like is there
Oh
any
yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry. You could go ahead.
No, yeah, that was my question. Like how do you go about that?
Oh yeah, got you. Well, mainly, well, honestly, the only time it only happened like once or twice. It wasn't a frequent thing. It honestly doesn't really happen to me a lot. It only happened once or twice, and it was kind of like jobs that I weren't like prioritizing. It was just sort of like back burners in a sense. Because I feel like everyone kind of does that. Like they always have the top one that they want, the top job that they want, and then other ones if they were like given the options. So. I kind of just like kept that open to me while pursuing like different opportunities because I feel like that usually happens to people for a job that they're not completely super interested in, but they just applied for it just to, have the application there or just have an opportunity there if nothing goes well. So it was mainly that type of thing, like how when people are applying for colleges, they have their safe schools and then their top schools and stuff like that. It was kind of like that as far as like a safe job type of thing. So it was mainly like that, and I actually didn't end up taking those roles anyways. So I would say it was mainly that type of thing. And that's kind of what I did in the job search as well. Just prioritizing which positions, if I was like blessed with the opportunity to work with them, like prioritizing the options if I had the opportunity to have options.
Thank you.
Okay, then Alina.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for all this information. I don't have a specific question for one speaker, but for anyone, can you talk a little more about what are some of the digital marketing tools and skills that is very important in this field? Since I still have some time in college that I want to make sure I can gain more experience with those tools.
In terms of, digital tools, I would say since like I said, I am with Gallo, I would just say LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really the biggest thing that we look at. I would encourage all of you guys to just update that in real time whenever you guys can. Any new position, any new executive position, any new job, volunteer work, certifications, to try to update your LinkedIn as much as possible. But yeah, I would say that one is probably our biggest thing that I look at personally, will be LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you.
I think it can also depend on like what you're wanting to do too. So if you're wanting to do something like more creative, then I would say, kind of play around with some different, like especially social media platforms and get kind of like, I don't want to say a portfolio, doesn't necessarily have to be that, but something along those lines. And then if you're looking to get into like an agency, more of like the company I'm working for, One of the questions I ask, and everyone's probably going to roll their eyes, it's Excel. That is one of the things that you're going to be in all the time. If you are at an agency, not necessarily for your entire career, but especially at the beginning. And it's just because it's something that you could have had exposure to. Some of the platforms, like whether it be programmatic, like some of those platforms, search platforms, whether it be Google or Bing, or even with social media, some of those, it's like a pay to play type of thing. You can't, as a just person in college, necessarily get that exposure. There are some certifications that you can get that are free, whether it be through LinkedIn or if it is, like through Google. Sometimes I've seen different people with those. I'm not going to necessarily look for that, but again, it could be something that kind of differentiates you and showing that you're interested in doing that because you've done this on your own time. I do think colleges are getting a lot better about preparing people for that, like really media, digital focused jobs. I think USC does a great job at that. But just know there's going to be some things that it's like, it's really hard to get exposure to doing it until you get the role. That's something I, as a recruiter, know. Like, I know you can't necessarily just like buy a, a client side contract with Amazon to get, like experience doing that stuff. So that's fine. I wouldn't expect you to come in with that, but I might love if Amazon's a DSP or something like that. So different things like that. Learning some of the terminology. Again, I think USC does a great job here, but knowing things like what is an optimization? When people say KPI, what are they referring to? Some little things like that, that probably to a lot of y'all on this call are like, obviously I learned that my freshman year. For me, I don't think I knew what that was until I was literally working my first job. And I was like, I'm going to need you to just slow down and tell me what that means. Again, we said this before, you probably know a lot more than you realize you know. But it can sometimes just be a matter of showcasing it. So like Nicholas was saying, really updating your LinkedIn and really making sure you're advocating for yourself, promoting yourself. And I think that is something that this generation is better at. You kind of understand. I hate when people say your own brand. It kind of sounds disingenuous, but kind of like, this is, some of the different things I'm looking to do. This is some of the different skills that I have that I can bring to the table. You have to tell people that. They're not going to just know or just see a degree and be like, oh, they studied communication, so I bet they're great at communicating, maybe, but different things like that.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else with a question before we continue? Okay, with that, before we get to the breakout rooms, I'm gonna plug some stuff going on at the Career Center. So thank you everyone for coming to this Industry Insights panel. We have two more, to November. First is nonprofit and then law and advocacy. Internship SC is also another program that the Career Center is putting on. So you can find cohorts of students who are similarly interested in different industries. So that's a really great resource. And then there's a few upcoming Career Center events that we have listed. Resume reviews, an internship SC get together with on communication, entertainment, and media, Trojan Talks,